Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome. I ask for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Roll call. We are glad to have Mark Mansell back. Good-looking beard there. I didn't know we
Tis
had
the
one.
season.
I know,
Yeah.
little mountain man thing going there, it's good. And Rebecca Bercy is excused tonight. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes of our regular board meeting of October 24th, 2023, and the closed session meeting minutes of November 14th.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Student representatives, come on up. This is gonna be fun, really.
On the bed at night, that's the only time she lets me pet her.
Yeah.
Then she gets overstimulated.
So we have Kylie and Ezreal.
Getting all feisty.
Yeah, that was my
I heard you were drawing lots to see who went first. Who won? Kylie, why don't we start with you? From Central High, we're delighted to have you with us tonight.
Alright, can I start?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright. Hi, my name is Kylie Maxey.
And if you would speak up so that everybody can hear you.
Alright. I am a senior at Central High School. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about myself and what I do at Central. I am currently working on finishing up my high school credits as well as being a part of our dual credit program. Currently in school, I am involved in Mentor U, Student Council, and our dual credit program. For my plans after high school, I am hoping to go to college to get my K-9 teaching degree or possibly my K-12 teaching degree. My sophomore year, I decided to switch schools. I have really bad anxiety and the bigger school setting was not working well for me. When I started looking into other schools, Central was an option. I had some friends that went there. When I asked about it, I heard great things about the smaller setting and the amazing teachers. Central has helped me in getting my grades up as well as getting me involved in school activities. During the first 3 months of this school year, we were pretty busy with a few different things. In the second week of school, our new 9th and 10th grade students kicked off the year by completing a day of team building and rope course activities with Central staff at Camp Waikota. October 11th was a busy day for Central students. We had 2 different activities going. Our 9th and 10th graders did a tour of the old Wisconsin facility and then completed some community service down at Bookworm Gardens. At the same time, we had personal finance experience at Central for our 11th and 12th graders. Earlier this month, our junior class participated in mock interviews with volunteers from a number of area businesses. Just last week, Wednesday, we held our annual service day and Thanksgiving meal. In the morning, students and staff worked on a number of community service projects, both in our school and out in the community. We are currently wrapping up our first trimester on November 30th and starting trimester 2 on December 4th. Going forward, we are continuing to work on developing our restorative conversations during advisory. We are also looking to grow our student participation in dual credit LTC classes from 10 current students this semester to hopefully 13 or more for the second semester of the school year. We will be doing exciting and fun activities around the holidays, such as door decorating, along with some work around the academic and career planning.
Wonderful. Questions, comments for Kylie? All right, Israel, do you want to?
Hello, my name is Azzy, and I'm your Warner High School
Azzy, I'll remember
student
that.
representative.
Sorry.
Nicknames, full names, doesn't matter. It goes. This year at Warner, a whole lot of new experiences have come along, including the newest addition of the Warner staff, Mrs. H or Maggie. Mrs. H has brought in some fun and new science experiences, and which I will get there in a little bit. Just hold on. But first, Warner High School has implemented a cell phone policy called Away for the Day. Phones stay put away all day on airplane mode to try to cut distractions from during the school day. We've also implemented the Warner Way, which lists the characteristics that we want to uphold as a community. Those being character, honesty, attitude, niceness, gratitude, and effort. Each of these characteristics help spell out the word change to show that when we leave Warner High School, we leave better than how it started. Checking up on our Rising Phoenix kids. For those who are not familiar with the program, the Rising Phoenix program is a college program for high school students to get their associates in art and science before they graduate high school for free. As of last summer, we had 7 students on track for their degree with an average GPA of 3.4. This year, we've added 9 more students to the list, so as of right now, a total of 16 kids are on the way to get their associates, me being one of them. On to the fun projects of Warner High School. Over on our Maywood campus, Mrs. H, Kate, and Mr. Severson have been introducing more fun activities and educational opportunities. In STEAM PBL, the students designed devices to protect pumpkins when dropped off the balcony, and I want to say only 1 pumpkin survived. The sciences with Mrs. H have never had a dull moment. In forensic science, students traced evidence in a mock crime scene lab, and in biology, they got to use VR headsets to observe photosynthesis from inside the plant, which sounds super fun. I wish I would have gotten to do that too. Over in English, with Kate, they had 2 local authors come in and visit. Erica L. Block spoke about writing Gothic fiction and flash fiction and led the class in writing short stories. Carrie Schaefer came to class and spoke about writing memoirs and nonfiction narratives. Last week, Warner High School went to a field trip to UWGB and Lakeshore Technical College for a tour. At the UWGB, an interactive chemistry demonstration was awaiting and had students enthralled. Dr. Bree, a chemistry professor, showed several experiments showing all types of chemical reactions. Afterwards, students were rewarded with a trip to the bowling alley and some pizza. Our last topic is the new clubs and art projects of this year. Tech Club, Esports, and Student Council are already existing clubs, but this year we have 2 more. Art Club and Board Game Club have been added to the new addition to our extracurriculars. The Warner High School Art Club is adding 2 new murals to the building, and the Board Game Club has been enjoying the opportunity to play Monopoly with their friends. This year, the art students have been creating and learning all over, with making cultural masks, learning about the significance of different art forms in Mexican culture during Hispanic Heritage Month, and learning how to make stained glass creations on a field trip to the John Michael Kohler Art Center. Students also went on a scavenger hunt downtown Sheboygan to find public displays of art in the community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share the news for Warner High School.
Wonderful. Questions, comments? Thank you to both, you did wonderfully.
Thank you.
And it wasn't that bad, was it? Kylie, it wasn't that bad.
Jury's out.
The jury is out. All right, do we have anyone here tonight for community input? Seeing none, we'll move along to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President. Congratulations goes out to Dave Routman, a physical education teacher at Jefferson Elementary School. He was presented with the Elementary PE Teacher of the Year Award during the Wisconsin Health and Physical Education Convention at the end of October. This marks the 2nd time in a row that we've had a elementary teacher from Sheboygan receive that award. It's given to 1 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school university teacher yearly that conducts a quality PE program based on standards, using multiple teaching methodologies, serves as a positive role model for others, participates in professional development opportunities, and demonstrates leadership within their profession. So congratulations to Dave and Jefferson School. Congratulations also goes out to Tricia Roberts, the Sheboygan Theater Executive Director. She was nominated for the 2023 Athena Young Professional Leadership Award and the Athena Leadership Award. The Sheboygan Theater Company was also nominated for the Athena Organizational Award. The Sheboygan Chamber of Commerce is hosting the 2023 Athena Leadership Awards this Thursday, November 30th at Pine Hills, and good luck to both Tricia and the Sheboygan Theater Company. You may have seen the press article, or within, we'll also post it on our district's webpage, but article about a South High senior, Cheyenne Sturdivant, who's been planning an appreciation fun event for emergency personnel. Cheyenne decided to do this. She feels it's important to recognize emergency responders because they often don't get all the appreciation they deserve. Her grandfather and father both have died of heart attacks in the past year, and both times the emergency personnel were critical in helping that family. So she's started a GoFundMe page named Emergency Responder Appreciation with the goal to raise $6,000 so that there can be an event in the spring. This is part of the South High School's Red Team year-long project. And in a report, it was in the paper and also on WTMJ4 News out of Milwaukee, Mr. Steen, the Dean of Students, or Ben, also spoke about the Red Team, about their student leadership organization and how they set examples for the rest of the student body, and how there are various community service projects that are planned, including Cheyenne. So congratulations to Cheyenne, and looking forward to a wonderful event for our first responders in the community. Also, our Red Raider Robotics female drive team and pit crew attended TWIST, which is Together Women in STEM Thrive. It was a competition hosted by McWanago High School robotics team. They're called the Warrior Bots. Basically what ended up happening was it was designed for all female students from various robotics clubs around the state. Pit crew leader Violet Penkowski was awarded the Student Inspiration Award, and the team, which ranked 6th overall as a group, received the Twist and Shout Award, which was given to recognition of a team with the most team spirit. Coach Tim Patchy said, around Violet and the team has been an integral manufacturer of each and every part of this school year's robot, and it's on the robot. She probably fixes or assembles it if it's on the robot. And for her Student Inspiration Award, she received a trophy and also a Milwaukee tool set. So congratulations to Violet and the rest of the female Red Raider Robotics team. Both North and South schools held their National Honor Society ceremonies on November the 15th. I had the pleasure to provide the main address at South's ceremony, and I took a little different spin this year in which the theme was on failure. Typically a topic not spoken about at National Honor Society, but nonetheless a good one, either perceived or real. Students, to get into the National Honor Society, again, it's based on excellence in leadership, scholarship, character, and service. Students must meet minimal academic criteria, a 4.25 grade point average. They must do school and/or community service activities, and demonstrate leadership and character. Congratulations to all the North and South High School students, especially those repeat inductees, if you will, of the National Honor Society. So what a great accomplishment. This past weekend, the Sheboygan Hmong community celebrated Hmong New Year on November 25th and 26th. Again, North High School was the site of that event, and it featured speakers, dancing, food, entertainment, along with many people wearing their traditional Hmong clothing, outfits, and also those with a more modern twist or flair. Celebration was open to the public and brought together many people from around Sheboygan and surrounding communities. I had the pleasure of attending the ceremony and sitting up front with the rest of the community leaders and delegates, and I thank Mary Lynn and Sarah for attending as well. So, what a great celebration. With that concludes my report.
Any questions, comments for Seth? All right, let's move on then to the heart of our meeting. We'll start with item A, which is the referendum delivery method for construction process, and call the players up front to speak to that.
Come on up.
Good evening.
All right, it's my pleasure to kick this off tonight, and obviously Joe Vollmer's in the crowd, and Mark, Jake, and Jamie as well. So we're here tonight to talk about, as we are implementing our timeline for our referendum potential for November of 2024. We've been working with our architectural firm and guidance with Brave for the past over a year, 18 months now, to work through. So we're here tonight to really talk and have both representatives from Brave, Matt Wolfert, and Nate I'm gonna mess up your name, Nate, I'm sorry, Considine, here to talk about the topic of how we're gonna manage these projects And there are several ways in which we could manage these construction projects. Matt and Nate are going to share 4 different models with you, and then also talk about what that means to us as a district, what that means for our community. We're going to go a little history about how we managed the projects the last time we went for a larger referendum. In this case, the Jefferson Elementary, the North and South High School field houses, and the success we had with one of those models. And then allow you to have some conversation and dialogue, ask questions. At the end of the night, we're hopeful, at the end of this presentation, hopefully that we can come to some agreement and possibly take some action so that we can begin the next phase of our referendum work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Seth. Good to see everybody. Great to be back. I've had the good fortune of working for Bray for over 25 years, and one of my first major projects actually was managing the North-South Jefferson project from the same position we sit tonight, a year in advance, talking about a project. So it's really exciting to continue the long-time partnership we've had with the district. What did I do wrong? That way, Jenny? There we go. I got it. So, big picture, as Seth said, we're here to talk about what are your options as a district for how to deliver the construction piece of a project. And you may be saying, gosh, construction, that's way off in the future. We haven't even got to a referendum yet. But one of the reasons we're going to talk about this tonight is the option of bringing a construction partner on board earlier in the process to help validate budgets and become a partner in the process earlier. And so we're going to talk through what your options are. In Wisconsin, a bit unique is that school districts are different statutorily than village, city, town, county when it comes to how they deliver construction projects. You really have the ability to deliver a project however you would want to. I would say you could in theory, now board policy may not let you hire contractor A and allow them to do the whole project without bidding. I don't know of any school district that would do that, but I don't think there's anything statutorily that would prevent you from doing that because of the unique nature of where school districts fall. So what you have up on the screen and on the first 2 slides are what the 4 general models that school districts in Wisconsin use to deliver their projects. Very briefly, the solid lines represent contractual relationships between the school district, referred to as the owner in these generic slides, and the dashed lines represent lines of communication. So the first option, design, bid, build, I would say sometimes just called the traditional model, where a set of drawings and specs are developed, put out to bid, and whoever the lowest responsible bidder is awarded the project. You as a school district would hold 2 contracts, one with us as your architect. We would hold all of our engineers under our contracts. Again, you have 1 point of responsibility from the design side. And then you would hold 1 contract with the contractor or the general contractor who would hold all of the subcontractors. So very traditional process, used very regularly, used to success. One of the reasons that districts do that is if they have 10 different companies in their larger community that may be viable candidates to do the work, this would be a great way of giving all 10 of them an opportunity and allowing price to be the deciding factor. So that's one model. Contractually, you'd hold 2 contracts, one with us, one with the contractor. Number 2 is design, bid, build, design, build, or single source provider, as you can see. The difference there is that you as an owner would hold 1 contract with a company that would then hold the contracts of the architect, the builder, the subcontractors, etc. The reason that model, you can use it, but the reason most of our clients don't go that route is they like the check and balances that comes with having an architect and a contractor under separate contracts. It doesn't put us as an architect or them as a contractor in any sort of contractual relationship or fiduciary relationship with the other entity, which means if there's a challenge that arises, and I'll tell you, it's construction, it's complicated, things are going to arise, we both have the ability to work on your behalf, and there's no blurriness of, am I going to get paid if I go against the contractor or anything like that. So again, it is a model you could use. It's not one we see used a whole lot, but we wanted to share that with you. The final 2 models are both versions of construction management. So on the left, on my left, construction management at risk, model 3, should look very much like model 1, which we talked about. 2 contracts that you would hold. The construction manager in this case would hold all of the subcontracts. We would hold all of our engineer contracts. Again, you as a district, 2 contracts that you would hold. The difference in terminology between contractor and construction manager really is a bit of industry lingo. It's not critical. Again, contractually, it looks very much the same for you. It's more about how you select that partner. A general contractor in Model 1 is selected by who is the lowest bid. A construction manager you're hiring as your construction partner to provide you with professional services throughout the project. So they're going to bid out all of the subcontracts on your behalf. They're going to hold all of those contracts, so you get the protection from holding all the subcontracts. So really the difference between 1 and 3 is how you go about selecting that partner and potentially the timing of selection of that partner. Number 4 is another version of construction management. It's called agency. It's a model that's used in Minnesota because statutorily it's the only model they can use in the K-12 school world. But in that case, you as the owner would hold all of the subcontracts as well. So think of a painter or an electrician. You would be holding those contracts. We don't see that model used a ton. It is used, but it's not used a ton. And I think the main reason is most school districts in Wisconsin don't have large facilities departments who are professionals at managing major construction projects. And that model, number 4, tends to require a lot more paperwork, a fair amount of hand-holding, and is usually used by clients that would have large facility staffs who really are experienced at leading and managing construction, not operating, maintaining a school district like most public entities have. So those are the 4 options that school districts in Wisconsin use. And I don't know, Seth, do you want to touch on the next slide a little bit, kind of the history of where we've been?
Thanks, Matt. So when we were talking with Matt and Nate, really felt it was good for us to have a conversation about what the success was and what we used previously to help frame this a little bit, because you got 4 different models in this case, and what did we do previously? So in 2004, when we went out for the Jefferson North and South referendum, about the same time as Matt talked about, that the model, which would be number 3, that at-risk model, was the model the board selected. And with that, they looked at selecting that partner, or partners in this case. It was Schmidt, who did the north and south jobs and managed those jobs, and Cautious, that managed the Jefferson job. That those contracts were put out, and a process was used to deliver those contracts so that we knew pre-referendum what who was going to be the managers for each project. We, at that point, you're not, bidding out all the sub work. You're not doing that until it's time to engage in activity. But they worked alongside of us and Bray as we finalized the budget, as we were out doing referendum communications, as we were communicating within the community. They were out supporting our work to ensure that our referendum passed. And we saw success with that model. I thought it was important to be able to share and talk through that with you, that that's the model we used previously, and that it worked well for us. And so that's something that I think it's worth considering what we've used previously in this situation.
And the district has used option model 1 and 3 historically, but for the larger, more complex projects, Jefferson North, South, and a few of the projects on the 2016 referendum, this construction manager model was the approach that was used, and as Seth noted, it was very successful for the district in making sure that we had a partner on board to validate budgets before we went to referendum. It was a nice way in this case, in these examples, of keeping that management service local with Schmidt and Cautious in that specific instance, being the parties that were selected. Some of the smaller projects are still bid in the district using model number 1, but it's a great way to allow some of the smaller contractors who maybe can't do a larger scale or more complex project to still partner with you as a taxpayer and as a partner. So that's a little bit of a history. I'm going to ask Nate just to touch a little bit on kind of what the next steps would be depending on which model you select. Big picture, we aren't going to talk about the single source number 2 or the design bid build. It's just not a model that we believe is right and the district hasn't used historically. So when Nate speaks to these, we're really going to be speaking to number 1 and 3 or 4 as we move forward.
Thank you, Matt. I think it is, as we go through what the next steps look like, it's fair to say that the contractor that would hypothetically be used in either option 1 or option 3 is most likely the same contractor. It is how they're being utilized and how we're engaging them and when we're engaging them. And that's kind of what we want to talk about here. So in that option 1 with design, bid, build, this general contractor pre-qualification would often occur post-referendum. So we would decide if this is the route you would like to go tonight. We would pause on any general contractor engagement for the time being. We would move forward with referendum communications, post a hypothetical successful referendum. We would start the design process, and then once the design was pretty well factored in, give or take 3 months before bidding, we would solicit requests for qualifications from general contractors. At that point in time, we would review those statements of qualifications, and then prior to going out to bid, we would alert them to saying that this is the selected group of general contractors in which we are going to ask for bids from. At that point in time, they most likely will not know who else is also pre-qualified, but that's a discussion that can be had at the board. And then the drawings get sent out to all pre-qualified general contractors, and then we award, the board awards the contract to the lowest responsive bidder. So again, all of that really occurs post-referendum. In the construction management service slide, and we're going to, although we did kind of separate option 3 and option 4, both those next 2 slides, as we talk about construction management services, really applies to either option 3 or 4. So as far as option 3 and 4 goes, construction management services could be a timing of either pre-referendum or post-referendum. We'll touch on a little bit more detail there, but again, to what Matt said earlier, the pros of doing this pre-referendum is that we're validating budgets before we go out to referendum, where they're assisting in the communications, and they're a partner with you through that referendum process. There are some districts that do decide to go after the selection post-referendum. That's not uncommon, but I would say, Matt, would you say that 80% of the districts that choose this process, most of the time choose the pre-referendum, correct? In this process, we would plan to solicit statements of qualifications, so very similar to the prior slide. This time we're asking for those statements of qualifications pre-referendum. We would then shortlist those 2 to 4 companies based off of qualifications, interview such construction managers and receive the fee proposals, and then select construction managers. If you're trying to understand a little bit more of what does this look like pre-referendum, we did include a slide in here that is a hypothetical pre-referendum selection process. So going back, we would decide on the timing of selection here as we sit almost in December. We would solicit those statements of qualifications yet in December and into January. Shortlist those companies in January, interview in February, and then select by the end of February. The goal for, well, that seems a bit rapid, and again, as Matt started, it's a little bit hard to think about construction. Here we sit well a year ahead of referendum. The process here is to select them by late February so that we can validate budgets, start the communication efforts before we go to a hypothetical survey this spring. So this may seem really fast, but it's all very purposeful time to make sure that we have a successful communication.
Yeah, if I can just jump in there, as you recall from that timeline, and we'll come back and do a much broader discussion of the timeline again, but that community survey that we'd be surveying our entire community would take place in that March, April timeframe. And that's where we're really, at that point, have all the pieces pretty much nailed down with this is exactly what we're proposing. This is exactly, what it's going to theoretically look like, what the referendum's going to include, what it doesn't include, and ask for feedback. So if we want to make sure that that information is correct and up to date, and that it's very tight, that's why this timeline becomes such to get this done in the month of February, early March, so that we're able then to use that information when we turn it over to School Perceptions, the company will use, and we've used previously, to be able to develop that community survey that would take place in the spring, so that you're able to stay on track, that would occur. You get the results back at the end of spring, and you've got time to digest those results, make any adjustments we would need to be made based on community feedback, so that then we're ready for that by August, you as a board have to decide, are we ready to put the question on the ballot? That has to be decided in August, and to meet the statutory requirements for the pre-November process to get it on the ballot. So this is gonna start to accelerate pretty rapidly here this spring. And this is just one piece of the puzzle that we need to, determine so that we're able to move forward.
One little piece I forgot to mention in the difference between number 1 and number 3 is how the subcontractors are selected. In model number 1, because cost is really the main driver for the selection of that contractor, the bidders are literally gonna take the lowest bid on all of the subcontractor trades, because that's how the decision is made. That could mean that they're selecting companies from Madison and Green Bay and Milwaukee over companies from Plymouth and Sheboygan, because they're lower in bid, in model 1. In model 3, all those bids are gonna be open with our team and the school district team present. And if there's a painter from Sheboygan or an electrician that's local, or somebody that you would want to, that is a very close second place potentially, we have the ability to have a conversation with that second place bidder, ask about potentially finding ways for them to get to the point where they could be your partner. So many of our districts want to, as much as possible, because much of this is local tax dollars, they want to try to keep as much of those local dollars spent locally. That option 3 model does give you more ability as a district to, I'm not gonna say manage and hand pick who does that work, because there's gonna be times where you're gonna find that you save a lot of money not working with a local, and that's okay. But when somebody is local and is in a very close second place, which happens quite frequently, we have the ability to help you manage that and it'll keep as much of the work local as possible, while still being responsible financially and not intentionally overpaying for that. Apologize, I didn't add that earlier when we were on this. So, turn it back to the board if you have any questions, and I appreciate this was a pretty quick presentation on a relatively complex topic if you're not in the construction world, so happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, so we essentially have, I think it's fair to say, discussion between choice 1 and choice 3, but questions, comments? Sue?
So, if you could help explain to a layperson, the difference between model 1 and 3 is the contractor and the construction manager, correct?
It's terminology and it's how you select that entity, correct? In terms of contracts, you can see it looks the same. You as a
Yeah.
district will look the same. It's
Does
how
it
you.
cost the same?
It generally
A
does.
contractor versus
Yeah.
a construction manager?
Yes, I think the construction managers they're really getting paid to provide you a professional service of managing construction from start to finish. The contractor is really, they're just simply submitting a bid. And if they're low, and they do the work, they don't have any connections to the school district. You, in the case of the construction manager, have the ability to not only select who you work with as a company, but also select the people you're gonna work with. Who is my project manager, who is my on-site superintendent? 2 pretty critical roles to making those projects successful. But big picture, when we look across the hundreds of school projects we've done, is there some fluctuation difference between a project delivered under Model 1 versus Model 3? There is, but we have no real way of knowing exactly where that fluctuation came from. Because when you get a hard bid, it really is just, it's a number in total. You don't get a detailed breakdown of every trade and every discipline and every cost, whereby in option 3, you're seeing all of those costs from the beginning.
And the biggest part of that, in addition, is really the timing, right? So with a construction manager, you're either pre-referendum or shortly thereafter a successful referendum, whereas a general contractor, you're not finding out until the design is finished.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Mark?
I guess, can you walk me through how we are selecting a construction manager, if they're, if this is prior to actually, if they're participating in the budgeting of all this, how are we actually choosing them?
So what we would do is we would first off ask for qualifications. So the first thing we're gonna ask for is, what is your background? What is your company's capabilities doing similar K-12 school projects? What are the team members that you're gonna propose? As I said, project manager, superintendent, et cetera. What are your experience doing school projects on occupied school sites like we've talked about doing at Farnsworth? So the first thing we're gonna do is use qualifications to select a shorter list of firms that meet your goals for qualifications. After that, we're then going to ask them for fee proposals. Now, again, they're providing services, so their fees are gonna be percentage-based fees typically based on what is their overhead and profit, what is their, we have to have a payment and performance bond statutorily in Wisconsin, what are their fees for technology, and then we're gonna ask them for monthly costs for their on-site supervision, their trailers, et cetera. So we're gonna now have that financial framework in addition to their qualifications. It's not a bid. Those are just the basis and the percentage and the rates that we're gonna use as we go through the process, working with them. But we are selecting that partner based on their qualifications in combination with their fee, not just by saying whoever is the low fee is getting the project.
And I guess, when we're looking at this, are we looking at this as one project? Meaning both schools being built and demolished? Two projects where we could have potentially two construction managements, one for each? And especially depending upon their resources, maybe they can't fulfill both?
Yeah,
And I
sorry.
guess, and not only that, but I mean, I don't know if there would be different fees for each, or if those would be, you know, essentially, if there's a bidding process, or otherwise, I would think their standard fees would be the same for whichever site. Or are we potentially looking at it as being four, that there's two buildings going up and two buildings going down, that we could potentially have four different construction managements?
Sure, great question. I think right now what we have talked about is allowing construction managers to propose on one or both. And we're not gonna commit that we're committing to one construction manager or two, and district team, correct me if you have a different perspective, we have not committed to that. I would say generally, and I'll use Farnsworth because it's just an easier example, I think we would keep the construction of new Farnsworth and the demolition of existing Farnsworth as one. Just, it's one site, it's one mobilization, it's one project manager. When the old building comes down, we do have some work to do on the existing building to make that north elevation. So that one, I would say, that's one project. Could we take urban and the parking lot standalone? Yes, we probably could. I don't know if there's economic benefit to it. I think you generally benefit from the economy of scale of grouping the demolition of urban and the parking lot along with the new urban.
Well, I guess I
But we
just
can
think
talk
of-
about those
I mean, 'cause
details.
Like
Yep.
Spielvogel doesn't build anything, but they tear a lot
Yep.
of stuff down.
They would be a primary bidder to any one of these construction managers when it comes to doing not only the mass demolition work, but also the excavation and site work. I'd be shocked if they didn't bid to any construction manager we brought on board.
Yeah, I like the idea of accepting a single, you know, either bidding or committing to one or both. And especially if we have a chance to employ two different local companies at essentially the same rates, I think that would actually fly better.
That was the north-south Jefferson model that the district used previously. Yep.
Yeah.
Ryan?
You've mentioned a couple of times when it comes to would go with Model 3, we decide who the construction manager is. Who exactly is the we? Is that Bray by itself, or is that Bray in consultation with the administration, or Bray in consultation with the administration, with the board? What does the we look like?
No, that's a great question. I should have been more clear. The we is definitely, I'll say the generic district, because then after that, it's out of my court as to how the district's gonna
Okay.
make that decision.
Okay.
We, Bray, are gonna help you facilitate the process. We've done this with hundreds of clients. But our goal is to facilitate a process that's transparent, that allows you to get the information you need. We don't have a vote, we don't have skin in the game, we have a separate contract. Our job is to advise you through the process, and then the district will be making the decision.
If I can speak to that. When we as a district did that the last time with the north-south and Jefferson projects, it was the executive management team along with Bray and Joe that reviewed the qualifications, helped to look at that short list, brought forward what a recommendation was, and that went through the facilities committee at the time, was saying, here's what the administration's recommending based on this process that the board selected. Then it went through the facilities committee. From there, the facilities committee moved it to the full board, and then the full board voted on and entered then into contract with those companies. But it was an administrative recommendation to the committee. Committee then looked at it and made recommendations to the full board. Full board then approved it, and we moved forward.
Yeah, I wasn't here for when we
Yeah.
were South in Jefferson, so that's why I
Yeah,
wasn't
does
sure.
that help?
I do have one other question. With the construction manager being paid on a percentage basis, the one concern that I have is generally, from what I understand, with how these percentages work, the more the project costs, the more the construction manager gets, because if it's 4% of 100 million, well then, they get X amount. If it's 4% of 120 million, then they get X amount more. And is there a way that we can set this up to say that there will be a maximum, so that way the contractor or the construction manager doesn't just say, well, we're just gonna accept the highest bid and we're gonna push for that highest bid so we get more money, and then the taxpayers get stuck with a higher bill.
No, I think that's a fair point. I would say in general, if we wouldn't see the same percentage fee on $40 million versus 60 versus 80 versus 100.
Mhm.
As it went from 40 to 60 to 80, the actual percentage would go down.
Okay.
So the 4 would become 3, would become 2, or something to that effect.
Mhm.
So as you get more, the percentage goes down. Is the total going up? Yes, the
Mhm.
total's going up.
But their cut is gonna stay relatively flat.
Relatively flat. Now, the other thing I would say is these are public referendum
Mhm.
dollars.
Mhm.
There isn't more to spend.
Mhm.
So the reality is, it's not like it's a private entity that can just go, get 20, 30, 40 million more, and now suddenly you're paying more. We have fixed amounts, not to exceed amounts that are approved at referendum. The other part I would say is the construction manager themselves does not have any ability to control what the project costs.
Mhm.
They're being asked to estimate it the whole way along, but the market is gonna determine what the project costs. And on bid day, when we open up bids for all the different categories, that's gonna drive what it costs.
Mhm.
So it's harder for them, in my opinion, to intentionally manage costs up, because they really aren't dictating what things cost, the market is.
And if I can add to that, in a CM construction management relationship, their percentage fee comes across as a percentage. In all actuality, if you were to choose option 1, you're paying those same fees, but they're in general conditions, or they're in bond, or they're in different categories that build up to that amount.
Okay.
So it's not like you're paying for something in addition, you're just paying for it underneath a different lens, if that makes sense.
And you don't know what you're paying.
That's true.
So,
Okay, thank you.
So my question is, and I think I understand from your timeline, what you are looking for from the board tonight really would be a vote to adopt one of the 4 processes. With the assumption that the third process probably makes the most sense, it does to me, is Bray in charge of that process then?
we will help the district go through it, yes. We've got a standard process we've tried on, 50-plus K-12 projects.
And have we already contracted for that? Or
We,
how-
as a part of our work with Bray, that's part of our contract with them to help us through these processes. And so that process, Matt and Nate would go ahead and say, here's what we have done with other districts. We obviously would review that from a administrative side, and be able to then say, well, we like this, well, what, this may be missing, from the statements of qualifications, or that narrowing it down. But it's gonna be they're here to help, we're paying them to help guide us through these processes.
All right.
Since you heard them talk about their
Yeah.
project upon project, so, we don't, the last time we went out for referendum, or rebuilding these types of big projects, was in totality, was that 2004 referendum. So it's not something we're doing on a, we didn't build a new school last year, and now we're coming back, here's the process. So that's why we rely on their expertise to help us through this process.
Okay.
I just want to confirm that I'm right on this. It seems to me for me, option 3 looks the best. And what I like about it is the sense of having a better sense of how to control local employment. We've had a couple of bids that have come through us, and we've always dealt with the lowest bid, and there was one recently that was literally extremely close. I mean, and we ended up going not with the local, because they weren't the lowest by that much. And I like the concept of people walking through the new construction and saying, my dad helped do this, or my grandma worked on part of this. I think it's an ownership and an investment and a buy-in for the community that even if we had to spend a little bit more, would be worth it. And if I understood you correctly, there would be ways, if it was close, to go back and work with them to get them to the point where it would be economically very much the same.
That's correct.
So, am I correct, that's option 3?
That is option 3, correct.
And there are some, I'm sorry, Kay, there are some that, and Matt and they can talk to, there are some, obviously, when we get into this process further, there's some work and bid out processes that we, quite frankly, don't have local contractors
Sure.
that actually do that work, that we're gonna have to go, you know, but I'm hearing you as a board say, right now, at least through the comments, about this local influence and local factor, when we can make that work. And that's something I think you gotta think through and talk about, that we're a valuable aspect of this community, but so are they, and how we work together.
And I just think that's a really positive connection that would also potentially encourage more people to vote yes on the referendum. So I think it's a win-win if we can do that.
All right. Oh, Mark.
I'd move approval of option number 3, the construction management at-risk model for proceeding with this item.
Perfect. Just what I was looking for. We've got a second. Other discussion, questions?
I would like to emphasize what Kay said about communicating to the community. Why we chose selection 3 was so that we could help guide local people to be involved in the construction. So I would love that to be emphasized in the communication as we reach out with referendum.
Can I have one thing? We are planning actually to do a local contractor listening session in early 2024. We were waiting a bit for this so that we could be more clear on what direction we were gonna use. But we are planning to do a local contractor, subcontractor listening session in early 2024 to make sure they are up to speed as to what's happening and the model we're gonna use. And now the board's, I won't say direction, but the board seems like general consensus that local is important to you. And we're gonna do our best to make sure we're keeping as many of the construction dollars local as possible.
To spin off of that, that's gonna be part of how we sell a referendum to get it passed. You know, so I think that's where that will come in.
And I think it's just important to realize, although we were talking about a construction delivery approach, we are still waiting for the community to tell us that we are in fact going to go ahead with these projects. So it's just a little bit of a really smart horse before that cart, so.
Good point.
All right.
I just have
Sarah.
a feedback. I know that we have our students work on the houses. Is there any way that we could get students involved with this, or is that too big of a project?
Many of the construction managers will have some internship trade program based. There's some OSHA safety challenges on the commercial projects that make it a little more difficult to say they're going to work on it. But many of the construction managers in the K-12 world, they're desperate for people to go into the trades. And so anything they can do to get students involved on the site, they will often do for a variety of reasons.
Very good. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the construction delivery approach, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Congratulations, thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you, Matt, and thank you, Nate, for all your work thus far, and we're looking forward to continuing working with you to bring this project to fruition.
Thanks, board. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, excuse me. Let us move on then, if we can, to item B, which is the SASD school and district report cards. Jake, Kelly, come on up.
Oh, no, it's right.
Welcome, all set?
Thank Thank you. Yeah, we are ready to go. Want to thank Kelly for her work on putting this data together. As you know, every single year, state report cards come out in November, and they actually came out, they were released like the day of our last board meeting. So we needed a little time to put it together for you tonight. So overall, I think really good improvement and growth in our district, and Kelly will share that with you. And then we'll talk a little bit again about what that report card is, how it works with our comparables, and I think some areas where we have some concerns with the data, the numbers, the formulas, and just making you aware of that. So we're having a good conversation in our community about these scores. That said, I'm gonna hand it over to Kelly.
All right, great. So for the state report cards this year, there are no new changes to the look or the calculations of the report. As mentioned last month, the only change is the switch from Aspire to pre-ACT secured data included at the high school level. Just as a reminder, the state report card is a part of our state accountability system that is produced from the GPI. It is produced for every publicly funded school and district in Wisconsin. These report cards include data on multiple indicators for multiple years across 4 priority areas, which are achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation. In addition, the report card provides course and program participation information for grades 9 through 10 for public schools and districts, and a school and district's overall accountability score places the school and district into one of the 5 overall accountability ratings, which are significantly exceeds expectations, meets expectations, meets few, and fails to meet. The Sheboygan Area School District for the 22-23 district report we meet expectations. You can see the breakdown for our elementary, middle, and high schools listed here under those categories.
Is Cooper a feeder to Horace Mann or to Urban or Bourne?
Cooper feeds into Urban.
Okay.
Looking at, when we talk about what we're seeing with our schools, you might remember from our presentation last month in October, we talked a lot about how we saw achievement scores increasing overall in our schools. When we sit back and we reflect on the report card data, however, we see that achievement data, but then we are struggling to look at our growth score data and understand where that information is coming from. So we broke down 3 of our elementary schools here, Cooper, Jackson, and Longfellow. And if you look, the first 2 columns closest to those schools represent their achievement, the percentage of students that are advanced or proficient in math, the previous year to the next year, and you can see those scores increasing from Cooper's math score in 21-22 to their score in 22-23. You can follow that for all of our schools, but yet when you look at the growth score, those don't match what we're seeing in the achievement, and that is a part of the struggle to understand our report cards. Same thing for ELA, we have that data there for you to take a look at. If you look at our middle schools,
Yeah, let me just,
sorry.
Yeah, let me
Go
just
ahead.
jump in. So I wanna just make sure everyone knows what we're looking at here. That state, that row for the state, right, what it's showing like for math is that they were down. The state percentage of students advanced and proficient went down 1 point, but the average growth for the state was 66. But yet Jackson went up almost 12 points, but their growth was 45.1. And then you get into the growth store and you can't do it because it's value added, and it's a 12-page long formula, and it takes into account things that we don't know how they're calculating it. So that's the concern for us. Some of this I can explain as far as it's a 3-year average and a good year dropped off or something of that nature, but that growth score, it counts for so much for our schools because in a more affluent district, the report card is weighted toward achievement, but in a district like ours with free and reduced now at 60+%, that growth score is going to take on a lot more weight in that overall formula, so it becomes really important to us, and that's where we have issues with this report card and we see these issues. So what we did here is we pulled out the schools at the elementary, middle, and high school level that didn't meet expectations, just to show you that they did have growth, and in some cases, amazing growth. And it's kind of disheartening for a school like Jackson and Cooper to see that type of growth and then get dropped down from where they were the year prior. I think it's also a good year for us to say it as a district, for us to come as administrators and say it as our scores are up. When your scores are down and you're saying the report card's no good, it looks like you're just making excuses. Our district's up this year. Scores overall are up. That we're not putting a lot of weight in it. We have our own measures. We'll talk about those. These are what they are, and we just want the board to be aware of what it looks like.
I just, again, I think you've covered it, just want to put this data in front of you, same thing for our middle schools. Horseman, Etude, and Urban are represented here. You see the same types of things happening, where there's growth happening in some areas and those scores are coming up. In other areas, there's growth, but the score stays the same for the growth score. So those things are what we're saying is confusing to us, and we're working on that. Yeah.
And along the same lines, the drop for Urban of almost 6%, 5.6%, that's a concern, right? So again, we're not here saying that we're done and our work is perfect. There's definitely some schools that have some work to do, and we're working with them in those areas. So that was one area I think that stood out to Kelly and I. Those Urban scores were a drop we didn't like to see. Yeah, Etude had some drops as well. Etude is so hard, Ryan, because their sample size is so small, and then when they don't test, those kids, they don't count for them and they don't count against them, which is different than if you look up Etude Middle School online, like on WiseDash, right? So that's the percent of students that are advanced and proficient. Within the report card, that number is actually much higher, and their score is better as a result of it, because when the state releases the advanced and proficient publicly, the kids that didn't take it count against you. When they use it for the report card, they don't count against you. So again, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole too much tonight, but if we really wanted to game the system, we would be looking at certain groups of students and encouraging them not to test. We would make it so that we test on one day and then there's no retakes, because it doesn't count against us on the state report card. That's not good for kids. It's not what we do.
Okay, then Mark?
I don't wanna belabor the math, but I just, when I look at a growth score, and it says 66 for the state. 66 what? Is that 66%? Is that 60? It doesn't seem like it could be a percent. What does that 66 mean?
It's a value-added number that's going to tell you that on average, 66 was what the growth was of students.
66 what?
That's just their score, right? Like, it's just their score.
They're basically saying that students can score, or school could score between 0 to 100. They're at 66.
Yeah, it's just a score. I mean, it's like getting I can't even say it's like getting a 66 on the test. It's just
I was gonna say,
it's
it's
a
not.
66, and then it averages out.
Yeah, but it's the same for everyone, so it's a
Yeah.
common number, so.
Yeah.
Mark, your question?
What is the significance of the numbers next to the schools in both of the slides?
Those are their overall report card scores, so that
Okay.
we can just reference that again.
Heidi?
So who created this and that DPI adopted it? Did they have to adopt this?
DPI had to adopt it, yeah, and then it gets it gets kicked around between the legislature and DPI and changed.
Jake, could you just speak up just a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's created, there's state legislator that's language that says we need to have this accountability system in place. And it goes to DPI, they talk about how they want to do it, and then it goes back. Value Added Resource Center is still one of the first things Seth and I went to 10 years ago to learn about the growth formula. They couldn't explain it then, they still can't. So it just gets kicked back and forth between the two groups, and we land where we land.
How does the private sectors differentiate, or how did they land on here?
What do you mean by private sector? Private schools?
Private schools,
Voucher
okay.
schools? Yeah. It depends on,
Do they use the same formula?
they don't get report cards, they get, and it depends on their population, charter school, non-instrumentality, instrumentality, all that good stuff, so that's all a little different depending on the school.
So it would be the same accountability.
It's not the same accountability?
It is not.
They just use their tax dollars, but not the same.
Correct.
Got it.
Not
Okay.
the same reporting mechanism.
Got it.
And who tests is dependent on if you're a voucher kid or if you're not a voucher kid. You got high schools that can take vouchers, but then they can also charge tuition on top of that. It gets convoluted. Yeah, I'll talk about South a little bit too, just because I think we've talked about South a lot. So this was an interesting one for us, good growth at South. Obviously, these numbers have shot up in the last year, so we're happy to see that. Our growth scores still don't reflect that. And it was really a school that when Kelly and I sat down and we spent time looking at this and dissecting it, it was one we wanted to kind of use as an example for you. So we just took school A, school B, we put their scores in for achievement, target group outcomes on track for graduation, advanced and proficient for math and reading, and their year-over-year change or their growth, right, in students that were advanced and proficient. School A and School B, and what those two schools are Green Bay East and South High School. And Green Bay East has a phenomenal report card score, and South High School not such a great report card score because of growth. So they, and the target group outcomes, that's mostly a growth measure too, as we'll show you in the next slide. So that's what's really, really hard, I think, for us to swallow, and I feel bad for the staff at South because they work so hard for their kids, and their kids do amazingly well. When you look at the percent advanced and proficient in math and reading compared to East, and I'm sure East's a great school. I kind of hate doing this to them, but the numbers speak for themselves, with the exception of that overall score where South sits at a 49.3, East sits at a 73.9. And again, where we really struggle with the growth piece is when you look at what is happening in these two schools side by side. You look at that target group outcome, right? So we're talking about a 72 at East, a 37 at South. And you're talking South High has higher achievement within that target group. They have better attendance within that target group, but yet their growth isn't nearly as good. And when you look at their on track to graduation, South has better attendance, much better attendance. They have much better graduation rates, and yet it all comes down to that growth number. You look at achievement, South High kids achieving much higher than East, but because that growth number is out of whack, for a lack of better words, they really get slammed on their report card. And if South High students weren't growing, their achievement couldn't be that high, right? If they weren't coming to school. So that's what doesn't make sense to us in any of this. And that's what's really frustrating, is to see a school where attendance is really low, achievement is really low, graduation rate is lower, but yet we're being told they grow so much more than our kids. Doesn't make a lot of sense to us, and really creates an issue of using this in any meaningful way with our staff.
This leads in nicely to our next part of our presentation. We oftentimes talk about what are our comparables as far as districts, and the reality is there is no identical twin in the state of Wisconsin. So in looking at our comparables, we narrowed this down to districts that have 4,000 to 20,000 students, and with an economically disadvantaged percentage between 45 and 65. So looking at this, we feel like these are more representative of comparables to Sheboygan Area School District. When you look at the comparable data here, and you look at the overall accountability score, you find that within our comparables, we fall right in the middle of that pack. Again, that is based on the overall size of our district enrollment and based on our percent of economically disadvantaged, so placing us right in the middle at meeting expectations. Looking on then to, I gotta remember here. Sorry.
Yeah, I got it. So we're looking at our comps here, and what's good about this, I think, is it just shows the grade span testing for our students. So what we do every single year when we get our 11th grade ACT scores, we just take a look at where those kids were in third grade. How many were advanced and proficient in third grade compared to where they are in 11th grade. And that number, again, it's not so much a percentage as much as just when we benchmark that compared to state average or compared to our comparables, where do we fall? And with our comparables, we fall at the top. When you combine English, ELA, and math, and it's a really interesting piece to look at for us. It's a good measure. Every single year we do two things. We'll take these numbers and we'll plug them into SPSS, right, some stats software, and we'll see if there's a correlation between free and reduced lunch and the score. And there isn't so much when you look at the cohort testing. When you look at the state report cards in general, we'll throw all 460 districts, whatever there are in there, and it'll come back as there's a direct correlation between free and reduced lunch and report card scores. So we find this to be a better apples to apples comparison among districts. We're very happy with where we fall here, and what we're saying is that from grade 3 to grade 11, this is what our kids do, and they do it really well. Our district serves our kids well. So just because our curriculum might not align really well going from 7th to 8th grade with the state tests, we know that by the end of 11th grade, our kids have what they have compared to other districts here. And in the end, that 11th grade benchmark is that ACT, which is based on the likelihood of a kid getting an A, B, or C in their first college class in that area. So we did that for our comparable districts. We know we always get compared to our county districts. That it's our school's not like any other school in the county. I think our size and our diversity is a strength for us, but we know those comparisons are going to be there, so we wanted you to have that as well. So there's our county district data as far as report card score, and we fall on the bottom there, which is always hard for us because when we flip the slide and we look at our cohort data, we do pretty dang well. And second to Cedar Grove, and hats off to Cedar Grove, they earned that top slot. But looking down that list, you can see some pretty interesting numbers there, and I think we fare pretty well, and it says a lot about the staff in our district and their dedication to our students. So again, overall here, just good scores.
Jake, before you move on,
Please.
And I always forget this, and I've asked it, with our English language learners, are they taking the same tests as children who are native English speakers?
They're required, unless they're new to the country, they are required to take the state assessments as all of their peers are.
Okay. So the fact that 18% of our kids are English learners compared to, say, Colon, where it's 4%, that, would you suggest that might have some effect on how children do on the tests?
Absolutely. Anytime we have English learners taking an assessment that is built for English speakers, there is a significant disadvantage, and so that would play into their outcomes on those assessments, and therefore if we have a higher rate, our scores will be likely lower for those students.
That must be really tough on those kids.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a test where you can't
It is.
you can't read the questions? I
We're
mean,
able to provide some supports and things for them to access the material, but
Okay.
yeah, it's a reading test for students who are developing their reading of English, so.
Okay.
And if you look back into our last presentation on this, I think it was 2 months ago, what we did on that one is we put on the percentage of ML students in our district and the percent that are advanced and proficient in our district and the percent that are in the state. So we do better than the state average with our ML kids, but state averages, I think, was 7% are advanced and proficient in the state. So when 20% of your students, or 18% of your students are ML, it's going to hurt your score. There's no getting around that. But that doesn't mean that we're not gonna do what Kelly said and make sure that those kids get every opportunity that our other students get, and that
Okay, thanks.
we move forward.
All right, then just circling back to our college and career readiness report card. Remember that the state report card is just one of many indicators our district and schools use to indicate their performance. In order to obtain that more complete picture of our district, the schools, and students, areas of strength and growth, it is important to consider information from a variety of sources. So we created our college and career readiness report card to help us collect, plan around, and support our high schools in preparing our students to successfully take the next step in their self-defined career pathway. So again, we put this data in front of you. This is our data for all of our students, and the next slide is for our students that are four-year college bound or are indicating as such. The college and career readiness data and our indicators we've identified for middle and elementary level, along with the state report card, help us to monitor our progress and implement plans for continued growth.
So, again, the purpose of this is just to bring it back and remind you that we have other metrics that we look at outside the report card, and we know that to make kids career ready, those are the benchmarks we need to see, and for college ready, we have these benchmarks as well. Colleges, again and again and again, will tell you that it's the 2.8 plus for GPA, and the highest level of class pass that is the best indicator of college success. And as we track students into the workforce, we know that those indicators are what matters for career readiness. So we continue to hit those really hard and focus on them at the high school. And along the way, we look at our cohort data and we feel good about where our students are going academically from a testing standpoint as well.
Slightly off topic, I know that with college and career readiness, sometimes you include the two-year degree intention, but I don't see any marks up there. And I guess one of the things that I found a little bit odd is the tick up over the years, up to four-year college career ready that the students are indicating. Are we seeing a drop-off in participation in Red Raider manufacturing and stuff like that? I mean, seeing that you have these ticks up in four-year college interest?
Yeah, so that's not the number of students saying that they're interested, it's just the percentage of students that are ready. We are seeing, I'd have to look to be sure, but I believe we're seeing an increase in the number of students doing two-year, and a number of students hitting their benchmarks for two-year. That was an area of emphasis for us like 2-3 years ago. Percentage of students wanting to go to college is pretty flat.
Okay.
And I think that's industry in this community and this county doing a pretty good job of making kids really think twice about if they want to spend money on college or not, if they're not sure it's for them, because there's some pretty competitive wages through our, if you're doing the house construction and things like that.
I'll add too, we do continue to collect that data for all of those groups, and that we did share that CCR data previously, we just chose to.
I was just curious, and I guess I wasn't, didn't initially understand the top line there, but that's 88% of the kids that have stated there.
Finished? All right. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
Thank you, Jay, thank you, Kelly.
Yes, no action on that. Thank you. Lots of numbers. We will move on to item C, tabulation of bids. This is for a wheelchair lift van. Mark?
Okay. So we're looking for authorization to purchase a wheelchair van. So special ed is using this new van to replace an older van at James Madison School. They're gonna keep the older van too. A lot of times they need that extra van to pick up a wheelchair bound student, so they will keep that as a backup. Very difficult to find these vans that are available. We did find, we have already 2 Ford Transit, so that's what we were looking for. We did get one bid back from them, from A&J Vans and Velders. And one other dealer came back, but not with the van we had asked for, but they did have a Ram ProMaster that they bid out for us, so.
So you are recommending the A&J van?
Yes.
And questions? If none, could we have a motion to approve the,
I'd move approval to accept the bid from A&J Van.
Second?
any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you. We are moving on now to item D, which is the school board member pay. As you remember, we have had discussions about this in the past. And Santino and I have spoken with Seth at length, taking into account some of the questions and concerns that had been raised previously. What I want to do is turn your attention to the current rate, which I know I have right here in front of me. As you can see, the last time the salary was adjusted was in 2018. And so it's been a number of years since adjustments have been made. These kinds of fee or salary increases for essentially volunteers, it's always a kind of a tough discussion. And it is particularly tough when you let it go for 5 or 6 years without an adjustment. I know that we had a variety of opinions, but what Santino and I would like to recommend as just a way of dealing with this is that on an ongoing basis, the school board salary gets the same percentage increase as our staff. So for the 23-24 school year, it would be a 4% increase, and after that, it would be any amount that typically our staff has been receiving between 2 and 2.5%. For regular school board salaries at $3,000, that would be about $10 a month for this school year, and somewhat less, assuming a 2% increase. It would take a number of years to reach a $6,000 level, but we feel that, first of all, school board members, the compensation is somewhat modest, given the amount of time and responsibility that is involved. But rather than go through these really sometimes heart-wrenching discussions, that if we just treated our school board members as we do staff, those would be extremely modest increases each year, but they would be increases. And then we would not need to make big jumps and account for that. I wanted to open it up for discussion. Ultimately, my goal would be to have a motion to approve what I have just discussed, but that is only, depending what you all wanna talk about. So I'm just gonna open it up and Mark.
Just a point of clarification, I thought just is by board policy, we could only increase our salaries in June.
You can increase as a board any time that you desire to do so. We're not bound by other districts, as the
What am I thinking of then? Because
Well, you typically bring it forward in April. In April. However, there's nothing in statutory language. That was one of the questions that you asked us to look into. There's nothing in
What about
statute.
my policy though?
There's no policy that talks about board member pay. It can be adjusted at any time. It's just typically been an item on the annual, and when we had it on the annual meeting, it was, why don't people come back with some ideas or recommendation, and then you guys, as a group of board members, need to talk about it, and I believe that's where we're at tonight.
Mary Lynn, I understand the idea of correlating it to what staff is, but what about those years where we have a different percentage for teachers, a different percentage for administrators? Are we still correlating just with staff and support staff for the
Seth, I
board?
thought we were, at least more recently, these have been relatively the same.
Most
comparable.
recently, we've been very close on all. This past year was the same for all, the year prior. We've had a couple years where the support staff, when we when we increased some pay for support staff, they were a percentage, half a percent higher than the others. I think you'd have to talk about what that looks like, but that's, historically, we've tried to give the same percent increase to our.
Yeah, but it hasn't always worked out that way, and I mean, and I think there's potential for some volatility
But we
in the
could-
future, you know, that there could be disparities between our three different employee groups.
And
So to
that's a
correlate
really,
the board salary to
Yeah.
one in particular, I don't think, you know,
I think that's an excellent point, and if there is a motion to do this, and I'm not saying there will be, but if there is, we could simply add, in those years in which the increased amounts are not the same, we could average them among the three groups and take that percentage. And I think that's a reasonable way of dealing with it.
like I said, I understand the logic behind that, and I mean, it makes good sense, but at the same time, you know, all 9 of us walked into this job knowing that it's, you know, 3/4 volunteerism and 1/4 compensation. I like the idea of what we're getting paid can kind of offset whatever some campaign fees someone might have once they're on the board to run again, or for their transportation, eating a meal out because you're not at home, or for childcare. I also like the idea of us having the ability to look at our comparables and seeing what other board members are receiving, and that we can hit that target, so we're kind of staying more in the middle, as opposed to if we keep getting raises every year, there's the potential we could start skipping over people that are maintaining theirs. And I guess I like, you know, and I understand the concern about having a big bump at some point to having, you know, an extra $200. But I think if we look at that as being a percentage increase over how long it hasn't been since we've had an increase, I think that's a fairly easy sell for a bump up when we decide to take a bump up. So right now, I'm kind of satisfied where we sit in our comparables and what everybody's getting. I don't think anybody's really getting cheated out of anything.
Okay?
Nobody came into this for the money. No matter what we decide here tonight, it's not gonna be a lot of money. You're talking $10 a month before taxes. So let's not make this into a bigger thing than it is. I think we're trying to solidify a plan so that it's not, it doesn't take all this time and angst that it doesn't have to be. If we haven't gotten a raise in 5 years, and it's a 4% raise, it's less than 1% per year in that time period. And as a person who has recently run, I can tell you that if you decide to run again, your campaign fees are going to be substantially higher than you could imagine. So this world that we live in has changed dramatically, has become, unfortunately, a very political issue. Anything we do with money will probably get twisted that way as well. But I personally would like to recommend that we go ahead with the recommendation from Santino and from Ms. Donahue.
Heidi?
I really appreciate this idea of planning now, that every year the board knows what is going to happen, this incremental raise. It feels like deferred maintenance on your house, to look at this and say nothing's happened since 2018, and before that it was 2008. That it just seems very unwise to just keep kicking the can down the road and then saying, let somebody make this decision and let it be on their political head to make the decision that year. So I really appreciate the idea that there's a continuous plan and that it feels very equitable to me. I don't see how we could ever get up to 6,000, you know, your concern, Mr. Mansell, about going above what someone else is doing when we're starting at 3,000 and talking about such a small percentage every year. So, I feel really good about that proposal.
Oh, come on.
Okay, I will throw myself on the funeral pyre here. I move.
I beg your pardon.
I move.
It's hard.
Yeah, I move that we increase the salary of school board members, including the president and vice president, by an average of what we give our staff, which would also include administrator, support staff, and teachers on an annual basis. And that we grant that increase on the first full board meeting after the election. So that way, because then we're being consistent with what we've been, with making that decision. It's been consistently, we talk about our salaries at that point, so.
That is your motion. That is your motion?
That's my motion.
I will second that.
All right. So I'm just going to read this back to make sure I've gotten it correct. So that you're moving that there would be an increase of school board members' salaries each year at the time of the first full board meeting that would reflect the average of staff increases for what years, Seth? I'm trying to think. If we did that in April, it would be the pay increase that was in place when?
We typically don't have the pay increase for
Until the
employees till
previous school year.
done later in the year. I mean, I can
Yeah.
change from year to year, so.
How about when, would you be open to an amendment that would state that the increase would happen at the same time that staff receives an increase?
Yeah, I suppose, I was just trying to be, to come up with some consistency,
Yeah.
but I'd be open to that amendment.
Okay.
And then Sue would have to,
Yeah.
Yeah. Second.
Well,
Yeah.
so we,
Verbiage.
yeah, this is a little odd, so we
Yeah.
do have this on the floor. How are you all feeling about this? Good?
yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
appropriate.
not a lot, compared to what it was last time when we had that increase. It was increased by, I think my salary went up like $400 a year, which got a lot of heat.
Can I just make a suggestion that maybe we withdraw it if we have any, I've got another question that we might want to consider.
We'll make that part of the discussion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The motion and second, so you can have discussion.
Mhm.
All right.
Was there any consideration for extra pay for extra meetings or for just straight up pay for attended meetings? Because again, tonight we're missing 2 members, myself included, missing some meetings. I mean, would it start to make sense to maybe pay for meeting as opposed to, what I mean, we can just take that current rate and divide it by what our expected meetings are, and then use that same rate if we would have
The
any
problem-
additional meetings.
Yeah, the problem with that is, and the county board has struggled with this for decades, is there may be fewer meetings, but there may be more meetings. And then there are certain accounting issues in terms of adjusting the pay each month, the withholding and so forth. So it seems to make more sense just to have the straightforward salary. I see what you're saying, but I think overall it's
Well, the
just.
county definitely operates much differently than we do. We
Oh,
have
sure.
standard 2 meetings a month,
Right.
and then an occasional special meeting, which I anticipate we'll probably have during the referendum time, at least one during that time, I would expect. Possibly more, but I mean, the special meetings are fewer and far between, but there are significant issues that come up, and those are usually very exhausted meetings where they, it seems like you should almost get additional pay for additional work.
Combat pay.
Yeah.
Jenny, did you get the motion? Or do you feel comfortable about the language, because I kind of bobbled that a little bit.
Let's see here.
So,
I have that Berg moved to increase salaries of school board members by an average of what staff receive on an annual basis, and grant that increase on the full first board meeting after the election. Then you asked if you'd be open to amend to receive the increase at the same time the staff receive it. She seconded it. That's it.
so the only thing I'm asking Mark or Seth is one way or another in terms of timing better?
In terms of timing of April versus
Yeah.
well, you're not going to know the what percent increase that's going to be until you approve that, and oftentimes we're coming to you in that June budget, when we're doing the preliminary June budget. Sometimes it's been a little bit before that in May, sometimes it's been a little later than that, depends on what,
The state.
what cycle we're in with the state. Does that sum it up, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's been all over the place. I mean, what you could do is that if you're changing it at that first full board meeting after April, you're just using that
Previous years.
fiscal year's increase, so, which would mean, it was 4% this year for staff. So after April election, the 4% increase would kick in. When we get to next April, we'll already know what the percent increase is for that fiscal year.
You're just lagging, if you will.
You're lagging behind.
9 to 12 months behind that way, as opposed to waiting, and then you're
So I think
lagging
that-
earlier and.
So I think this compromise makes sense.
Yeah.
If everyone, other discussion? Heidi?
Mine is just in response to the idea of paying per meeting. If it is about the work we're doing at that time, I can see why that is a consideration. But I think about all of the time I spend and other people in the sport spend outside of this meeting. Like the summer leadership conference, that's 2 days. The conference in January, that's 2 days. The spring and fall leadership workshops, you know, it takes 2 hours to get there, and then you're there for 2 hours and 2 hours. I mean, there's a lot of time, other than doing research, that I hope we're all doing, since we know in advance what we're going to be discussing. So, I'm not a big fan of the per meeting allocation.
I was kind of just doing rough figures of what we make, $250 per month, an average 10 hours per week makes us $6.25 per hour. So less than minimum wage is what we're making, and that's not including the events that we go to, the school visits that we do, the graduations, the extra stuff that we should be engaging in the community. So when people say that there are people that make nothing, $6.25 is pretty close to nothing. And if you factor in gas and time away from your family, $6.25 is not very much.
Yeah, that's about the same as what almost all of our athletic coaches earn now also,
Right.
And they're underpaid.
Is there,
or more.
is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion as amended, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Name.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. All right, let's move along to reports of committees. Kay?
Okay, we have the committee recommends approval for the robotics competition, which will be in Duluth in February. Good luck.
Road trip.
Not in San Diego. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I think that's,
And did I miss the second?
no, I think, Kay, you were
Kay
making a
should have-
motion, you made a
Oh,
motion
I'm
to approve
sorry.
that, right?
Excuse
So
me.
you're looking for a second,
Yeah,
Mary Lynn?
I'm sorry.
So I'd like to
Yes.
move approval of funding for the robotics team to go to Duluth.
So
I
moved.
screwed that up.
No worries.
And we've got a second, all, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
All right, number two, I would like to move that we go ahead with the funding for the robotics team in March to go to Milwaukee.
Is there a second?
Are we approving funding, or are we just approving
The
the,
trip.
allowing them to take the trip?
Okay, maybe I said that wrong, I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction.
So, I
Just
don't wanna be.
We approve the,
particular.
we approve the permission for the trip.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a second. And any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
Number three, this is, I'm sorry, Mr. Liederman presented on the opportunity to write a grant application. This would be for behavioral health, skill building, and other things in our community to help some kids in our special ed And I would like to move that we approve the permission to submit the grant.
Seconded.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. And then 4 and 5?
Are just for discussion, there's information there. We did show growth in our reading update, and we also saw improvement in class size.
All right. Sue in Human Resources?
Yes. Number one are new appointments, and Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve our new appointments.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
Number two is for information only, those are separations. Number three, retirements. I would like to make a motion to approve our retirements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And the following, number 4 through 15, with, we're going to eliminate number 7, are basically all new revisions and also deletions in our policy. We in committee went through all of these individual and approved them all. So I would like to make a recommendation and a motion to approve these revised Board of Education policies, number 4 through number 15, with the skipping and not including number 7.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And that is
Chair
all I
votes
have.
aye.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Ryan?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, if we can go back to that?
Sure.
I will confess that I didn't read the committee meeting minutes, but why would we pull number 7, but not number 8 or number 9?
Seth has an answer for that.
Yes, the first read of the policy is being renumbered for that section. There was an issue with that policy, to which after the fact that it went to committee, we were made aware that there was some language that should have been included in that policy that wasn't, and that was on the Neola side of the equation. So when we received that language, I let Mary Lynn know and then let Sue know that we would like to bring that policy back in January.
But why is
for
it
the
specific to the,
It was only specific to that policy.
Some language,
Because the other two are being deleted, Mark.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other ones
Rolled
are
into
deleted,
that.
so they'll bring in a new one.
number 8 and number 9?
Is to delete
Is
policy
delete 'em.
3123.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
got it.
Thank you, Mark. I'm
Thank you.
sorry, I didn't understand the full, but that's why we pulled number 7. It would make sense for us to come back to that one if we have all the language that we need to have.
Thanks for clarification.
Very good. Ryan?
Thank you, Madam President. I move approval for Facilities, Recreation, and Theater of item number 1, tabulation of bids for security cameras.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just to give you brief information, we'll be talking a lot about referenda tonight. The cameras that were purchased with the last referendum some 9 years ago are starting to show their age, and this is to get the process going to get them replaced and refreshed.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
Thank you, Madam President. I move approval of item 2, the fund balance request with 5-year capital schedule for the rec department, for the rec department.
Second.
Discussion?
Okay, we did have a fairly lively discussion about the percentage of the fund balance, which is consistently higher than what it is for the district overall. And we have encouraged John that if he sees that there is a need during the school year, for where the fund balance can be used, that he bring it up to facilities and rec and then to the full board for approval.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And I move approval of items number 3 and 4, the Sheboygan Theater Company and a CRD financial report.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And of course, the facility and permit report is for your reading pleasure only.
All right.
And now we'll move on to finance and budget, if that's okay, Madam
That's
President?
perfectly fair.
Okay. I move approval of items 1, 2, and 3, the Fund 41 capital project statement of cash flow and revenues and expenditures reports.
Second.
All right. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And item number 4 is more information. I move approval of item 5, the fund balance designation discussion.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yeah, this was essentially confirming what we have discussed as a board, over these past couple of months. And so it's just basically a confirmation.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
I move, thank you, Madam President, I move approval of item 6, purchase of property for house construction program.
Second.
All right.
And we are going to be getting some vast tracts of land just outside here. We're getting 2 more lots with the purchase price.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And I move approval of item number 7, the contribution to Fund 46.
Second.
Discussion.
Okay. Just as a reminder, this is actually the $2.993 million that we had received from the sale of the property across from the Field of Dreams to Freighters. And the plan is to put this in Fund 46 for any possible, for any possible referendum, in regards to the middle schools.
Very good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.
And item 8 is for information only.
All right. Committee of the Whole, if Santino were here, he would tell you that we met in closed session and reconvened into open session. Special board committee assignments, committees. Heidi and Speth?
Yes, in case you didn't have a chance to read the SPEF report. The big news is the All In for Education event raised $23,655. So that was the most successful year financially, and I hear it was a great time.
It was.
I thought the big news was
Super
I marked in the
final
wheel.
No, I missed you, Mark. Needed you there, sorry, but I had a good time.
So thanks to all the raffle ticket purchasers and the players, and it was a successful night. The next thing to know is the deadline for scholarships are February 23rd by 4 p.m. So all the seniors in your life need to know that, and that they need references, so they can't wait till the last minute.
Is that including everything, like their essays, everything?
That is for the SPEF scholarships particularly, yes. They're due that date. So there is a fillable form online for the application, like the general application, and then each scholarship has its own requirements. So it takes a little bit of
Did
looking.
they talk about how they were notifying families about that? Because I remember last year, it seemed so early, and having senioritis for some seniors, it's sort of like, oh, I missed that date.
Yep. Both large high schools had, in their activity time, they had meetings with SPEF, and the SPEF was representing it. So the students that went to those times would have heard then. There were also parent meetings, and then each of the schools have a representative to SPEF that the communication is supposed to go through.
Great.
Thank you. Another big change is that this year there will be a single scholarship night instead of participating in Norths and participating in Souths. There's going to be one SPEF scholarship night. This year it will be Wednesday, May 15th. So the recipients will find out before that night, so they know to come. But then the students who are at the smaller schools also have like a celebration that they're a part of as well. So the presenters of the scholarships and the students and their families will all be invited to scholarship night.
Do they know where they're gonna hold it? North or south?
It's going to be at the Stephanie Weil Center.
Oh, right.
Just to clarify that North and South will still have their individual scholarship nights.
Oh, they will.
SPEF has decided that the scholarships that they manage, they wanted to do their own event for, as opposed to being at North or at South. So, again, this will be the first year that they're gonna try that, so see what that brings.
A lively discussion, I understand, so, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Heidi? Seth, anything you
I have
wanna-
nothing else to add. Thank you, Heidi.
Well, let's go to human growth and development. Jeff, you wanna come up to the table? I don't know if there'll be anything for you to, but just the excitement.
Lots of excitement.
Been here,
I mean, it's
you
the
know.
most exciting committee around, so it really is. Just a little heads up, we are giving the direction to allow for the teachers to work towards proposing a curriculum for our students to follow for the HG&D area, as opposed to recommending the purchase of all new books that everybody will follow. So this would be more of a digital approach, customized by the teachers. And so our goal is to work towards putting something together so that by year end, that we will have the new proposed curriculum in place and ready to go. So that's the biggest thing out here. Kay, is there anything else that?
Well, we welcome 2 new members. Anna Seaworth, who is a sophomore at South as a student. It's really nice to have a younger student who will be hopefully with us a while. And a new parent, Jen Cruz. The scope and sequence, which was, we asked for as a committee and the teachers provided. There's a listing of that. If you want to look into your notes, you'll see by grade what the proposed scope and sequence is. That will be brought back for further discussion, but at least it's a little bit of a now framework to take a look at. And I think it's actually quite cool that we are having our next meeting over at North High School in the health room. Ms. Tunison invited us to her environment, and next meeting is January 8th at North in room 224.
Quick question, how many teachers are on the committee for the development of that curriculum? If you know.
The high school people and the middle school people.
All the
So-
FIAD health teachers?
No, it's just the people who teach health.
Yeah, just, don't they do
Not-
dual sometime? FIAD
Well,
and health?
in most buildings, a person teaches health.
Okay. So they have one in.
They might teach health and FIAD,
Yeah.
but there's
I
typically
can have
one
Eric
person per.
jump in and answer that question for the
So
board.
there's 2 pieces. Your question on the committee itself, there's a middle school and high school person on the committee, but our teachers at large are working on the curriculum piece. So at the high school level, we've got a full-time health teacher at North and South, and then we have another teacher at North that teaches, I think, a section or 2. So our 2 high school health teachers are coming together on December 4th, we're doing a kind of a curriculum day and working on it. At the middle school level, 2 of our middle schools have 1 teacher, and then one of our middle schools has 2 teachers that split PE and health, so there's 4 of them.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.
The only other thing, I think it's always important to just get that perspective out there, is that we spend a lot of time on this, and it is important, but it's 2 weeks out of the entire semester of health. It is not a course unto itself. Thank you.
Jeff, anything else you wanna share?
That was it, so good. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
waiting.
you.
All right, very good. Future meeting dates, Seth?
Yeah, I just wanted to
We
put.
have merged things here a little bit.
Yeah, I want to put forward tonight, and it's not that we're not going to be meeting in January or February, but historically in December, we've held the one meeting on December the 12th, and we've not held a meeting the week of between Christmas and New Year's. And so our recommendation is to do a combined meeting on December the 12th, which would be committee meetings first and a full board meeting after that. And then the second one, we're looking at the month of March. we have a hard time with our students and our staff in terms of presentations due to the fact that that last week of March is spring break. Oftentimes, many of you are not here as well, and I'm recommending this year that we combine the meetings in March, and that's why we put it on here, so that we would do the same thing in March. It happens to be the same dates, March 12th and 26th, but we would have the meeting in March 12th to be a committee, then full board, excuse me, and forego the March 26th meeting, which lands in the middle of spring break. So that's my recommendation, but I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to discuss or questions regarding.
Makes sense? Anyone have a concern?
Yeah, except for my proposal for being paid per meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have presented this first, Mark.
Everyone gets to be salaried except Mark.
So if you're fine with that, we will move ahead and plan accordingly. We'll change it on our communications and so forth, but please plan then for the December 12th meeting and then March 12th meeting.
All right, wonderful. We are now going to adjourn into closed session. I request a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to WISTAT, section 19.85, sub 1, sub E, to consider strategies and discuss potential negotiations regarding acquisition of property. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mark?
Aye.
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 All right, we are in closed session.
We-
Thank you all for coming in the audience.
Madam President, if I may, we would prefer if we could meet upstairs for this presentation, only because of the fact that we've got some stuff to display.
Yes, I will read the time.
I am too.